Which games are must bets for week 12 of the 2024 NFL season? Welcome back, Gridiron Gamblers, for another week of NFL best bets versus the spread. I'm Mitch, and I'm here to give you my favorite picks versus the spread for week 12. 5 this week 12. If that sounds good, Gronk, spike the like button, and don't forget to subscribe for weekly NFL best bets just like this. I know there's a lot of you out there that watch this every week and you're not subscribed. So help a brother out and subscribe, all right? Let's get right into it. I do want to say that week 12, there are a lot of teams on bye weeks. So just be a little careful this week when it comes to betting. Don't force a bet this week because there's just not a lot to choose from. But allow me to pick through each game and give you my favorites. Beginning with maybe one that you wouldn't see coming. That is going to be the Kansas City Chiefs laying 11 points on the road at the Carolina Panthers. Panthers coming off the bye week. Chiefs coming off a loss in front of the world versus Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. I know that a lot of people will be on Carolina, and honestly, too many people are on Carolina. It's actually getting a little crazy at this point to be asking Bryce Young to compete against this era's best football franchise and team after a loss where they were not embarrassed, but they definitely did not look good. And they definitely were the worst team, right? I like Kansas City for football reasons. Everyone's going to say, Carolina's getting 11. They're at home. They're off the bye. Take Carolina. The Chiefs, they don't blow teams out. But you know how Kansas City can blow teams out nowadays? It's due to their defense. And I think their defense will control this game. And I think they will frustrate Bryce Young, who is one of the worst starting quarterbacks I've ever seen in the history of watching the NFL. He's a massive bust. And nothing that he has done over the last couple of weeks has convinced me otherwise. I'm sorry. He's facing the best defensive coordinator in the NFL, Steve Spagnuolo. And he's facing one of the most creative blitzing schemes in the NFL. On top of that, Carolina has greatly regressed in their pass protection as of late, and they've been heavily reliant on a running game. The Chiefs are the number one team against fantasy running backs this year. They are one of the best run defenses in general in the NFL this year. So on early downs, the Panthers will attempt to run the ball. It's predictable. It won't happen. It won't go for much. And that's going to force Bryce into situations that he has not been in since he has become the starter again. This hasn't happened against teams like the Giants, who concede the run. They're terrible against the run. Against Kansas City, they're going to have their runs stuffed. That's going to force them in second and third and long, where Spagnuolo can dial up blitzes and be creative to get pressure on Bryce, forcing sacks, forcing pressures, forcing mistakes, and ultimately maybe turnovers. The Chiefs have been hearing about how they can't get to the quarterback, and I think that's going to change this week. On top of that, Carolina does not have dynamic receivers. I'm not expecting them to really be able to separate down the field against a pretty good Chiefs secondary. So I think the Chiefs defense will dominate this game, and I can't see Carolina scoring more than 17 points, even at home. On the flip side, the Chiefs offensively, everything they do, I feel, matches up well with Carolina. Carolina has one of the worst pass rushes in football, specifically their edge rush. We've talked about how the Chiefs have been exposed by good edge rushes in the past. Right? Buffalo was able to do it with Von Miller and Greg Rousseau. Denver was able to do it with their plethora of edge rushers. Certain teams have been able to get after Mahomes, even the 49ers. But Carolina's not one of those teams. They don't have a pass rush. They have to blitz to get pressure. What's the one thing you don't want to do against Patrick Mahomes? Blitz. He's too smart. He's too quick with his release, and he knows where to go with the ball every time. What is Carolina also awful at? Stopping the run. I think Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco, who will be back, I think, for this game, will be able to run the ball and get 3 to 5 yards a pop. Just, that's the way Kansas City plays. They control the clock. They control the game. They go on long drives. They run the ball. They do their short little passing game. And if you blitz, they're going to be able to hit a couple big plays, maybe to Worthy, for example. Just throwing that out there. Carolina is also awful against tight ends. They're the second worst team in tight end production this year. Noah Gray has been pretty good lately. Travis Kelce, obviously, on the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think the Chiefs will be able to run the ball, throw to their tight ends, hit a couple explosives, and even if D-Hop is limited by J.C. Horn, let's say, I think everyone else can thrive in this game offensively, and Mahomes kind of does need a bounce-back performance. This is a Chiefs team that doesn't lose very often, so when they lose, it puts them on alert, and I think they will dominate this game. It's 11 points, which is a lot, but I expect them to win by 2 touchdowns, maybe around 13 to 17 points, within that range, let's say. So I like Kansas City. Everyone is going to take the Panthers because it's in Carolina and they're off a bye and they're getting a lot of points and the Chiefs don't cover big spreads. I've heard it all before, but I don't think anything football-wise makes sense for why Carolina will be able to cover. Their defense is atrocious. They can't rush the quarterback, and I don't think their strength is running the ball. I don't think they'll be able to do that in this game either. So give me Kansas City minus 11. Next up, I like the Titans. It's been a minute. It's been a while since we've taken the Titans, and we've largely been wrong on these bets as the Titans are the worst team in the NFL against the spread. But at 8 or 8.5, preferably against the Texans, a team that I've been outright praising lately and a team that I think is going to be dangerous in the playoffs, the Houston Texans. Shout out to the Texans fans. I like the Titans. First of all, it's a divisional game. I think the Titans are a really solid defensive team. I think Will Levis played one of his best games of the season against the Vikings, one of the best defenses in football. I thought the Titans actually outplayed Minnesota and probably could have won. And I feel like nobody recognizes that Tennessee is literally the unluckiest team in the NFL this year. Like, whether it be refs, turnovers, mistakes on special teams, the Titans have been a disaster. That being said, Houston is one of those teams that will win a lot of games. They'll win more than they'll lose, but they fail to win by margin because their offensive line has been a borderline disaster. They're playing a good pass rush in the Tennessee Titans, a good overall front. I don't think Houston, which is what they really need to be able to do to dictate games, run the ball. I don't think they'll be able to run the ball on Tennessee with Simmons, Sweat, Landry, Key, these guys up front that have been absolute savages against the run. They completely eliminated the Vikings run game last week. I don't think that Joe Mixon will have 3 touchdowns in this game, and they'll just be able to run it all over them. The Titans are also one of the best teams at not allowing big throws down the field, which is largely what the Texans do. They like to run the ball. They like to play action. They like to throw the ball down the field to Nico Collins, who is back, and to Tank Dell. But I think those plays will be limited. I think this is going to have to be a CJ Stroud throw underneath, get what you can get type of game. I also think it's going to be a bit of a grind, and it's going to be a defensive game. I don't expect to get much from Titans offensively because their O-line's pretty bad and they're facing one of the best pass rushes in football. But I do think they could sprinkle in the run. Will Levis is kind of known for 1 or 2 big plays down the field that will put them in position for points to Calvin Ridley or Westbrook Akine. He's been hitting these plays consistently, even against good defenses like the Chargers and the Vikings. So this is another good defense, but it's a divisional matchup in which I think that the Titans defense matches up with everything the Texans want to do offensively. And as long as the Titans kind of avoid those special teams mistakes to a large degree, and Will Levis doesn't throw a pick 6 or a fumble 6, I think they will cover this number. It's a large number. Vegas is starting to adjust to Tennessee in terms of like the number because they realize everyone's betting against them because they're not covering spreads. But I think at a certain point that will catch up, and I think this will be the game where they'll probably lose, but I think they'll lose by like 4 to 7 points, somewhere in that range where it's an ugly defensive game. I'm going to say something like 23-16, 20-13, something like that. I like getting a full touchdown plus a 2-point conversion type of deal in a defensive AFC South battle. So a lot of penalties expected in this game too, a lot of negative plays. I like the Titans with the points. Next up, the Seattle Seahawks at home getting a point, or just pick the money line against the Arizona Cardinals. I really was impressed by the Seahawks last week. I think a lot of people are kind of throwing the game out of like outer space here because the 49ers were, they are so bad. The Niners are done. They're toast. They're like whatever, right? But Seattle, I think people are kind of not adjusting to what Seattle has become because I think Mike Macdonald has finally figured out his defense, his personnel. He has them healthy, and I think that's going to transfer to this game. On top of that, Seattle historically plays against Arizona extremely well. I think, like, overall, Seattle has done really, really well against Arizona. They've actually won 5 in a row against the Cardinals. Now, I understand that was Pete Carroll's Seahawks, but Gannon was there. Kyler was there. That was dating back to Cliff's Cardinals as well. There's something about the personnel that largely exists on Seattle against the personnel that largely exists on Arizona, the teams that have played against each other, Geno perhaps as well, where Seattle just beats the Cardinals. So you're getting the team historically that's won 5 games in a row against this team. On top of that, you're getting the team at home. On top of that, you're getting the team at home that could be in their environment, being that it might rain. So Seattle in the rain versus a dome team, Kyler Murray in the rain. Geno is probably the better passer in that environment. Although Kyler can run, I feel like Geno is more equipped to play in that setting. And then you've just got the improvement that I've seen from Seattle. And you've got the matchups. So let's start with Seattle's defense. I like how a guy like Reek Woolen, a big, fast corner, can match up with Marvin Harrison on the outside. I really have liked how Seattle has improved against the run. Their interior defensive line is tougher than you would think. They've got a lot of good players in there, led by Leonard Williams. Ernest Jones, the linebacker that they traded for from the Titans, has greatly improved their run defense. And we've seen this against the last 2 teams they've played, the Rams and the Niners. They've slowed down Kyron Williams and Christian McCaffrey, and they've been able to put those offenses in awkward positions so that they can get Mike Macdonald into those exotic blitz package looks that have been so effective. Also, yes, Trey McBride could be a bit of a problem in this game. That's the one matchup I'm a little worried about. But I do think Seattle will be prepared for James Conner in the running game. I do think that Kyler Murray, this is not really this is more of a gut feeling thing. I've been seeing Kyler Murray out there, taking social media content, eating pizza with random people on the street. I saw him at a UFC fight. He definitely was living it up on the bye week. This guy was not all about football during the bye week. And Kyler is kind of one of those guys that you want him locked in. When he's not locked in, it feels like sometimes he just doesn't play his best. So I will throw that out there. It's not a reason I'm betting this, but I'm just going to throw that out there. On top of that, I thought Seattle got a huge monkey off their back against the Niners, a team they never beat. They were able to go in there and win in the last second. I like how Seattle's offense is going to be able to find matchups against this Cardinals defense because the Cardinals don't have a typical great 4-man rush, which we've said before, like the Atlanta game, for example. Atlanta has a terrible pass rush with 4 people. Geno in Seattle was able to win that game comfortably because the weakness of Seattle is their offensive line. And when you're able to pressure Geno, that's when he makes mistakes, and that's when he's not as effective, right? But the Cardinals kind of have to blitz and be exotic with their looks to get pressure, which I think allows more one-on-one matchups for guys like DK Metcalf, JSN, and Tyler Lockett. And that might also allow Kenneth Walker to have some explosive runs as well. Geno's also pretty good at getting the ball out relatively quickly against the blitz. So I could see Seattle making some big plays with their receivers against this defensive backfield that I think you can have definitely in man-to-man coverage or in one-on-one matchups. DK should dominate. And then you've also got JSN really ascending the last couple of games. So I like how Seattle has been able to adjust off their bye week. We saw it against the Niners. I like how their defense is ascending thanks to health and also adjustments made by Mike Macdonald. And I do think the Cardinals, they've been kind of at their peak because they beat a bad Jets team pretty comfortably. They beat the Bears, who were spiraling out of control and looked awful, were injured on offense. Their offensive coordinator just got fired. Like, the Cardinals are kind of overvalued. I feel like Seattle, people have not adjusted to what they've been doing recently. So I'm going to take Seattle at home plus the 1, but I'll probably just play the money line in this game. Next up, the New England Patriots are getting 7 and the hook at the Miami Dolphins. This game might be at 7, but try to get a 7.5. I would much prefer the 7.5 in the spot. And this is a relatively simple handicap. First of all, I think that the Dolphins are a little overvalued by this price, right? I think Miami was laying less points against the Raiders, if I'm not mistaken. I feel like they were laying about 6 or 6.5. I might be wrong about that, but I feel like they were laying less points last week against a team that I think is worse than the Patriots. Secondly, this is a divisional game, and you're getting 7.5 points. The first game didn't have Tua, didn't have Drake May, okay? And it came down to the last possession and the last throw of the game where Jalen Polk was out of bounds. The Patriots could have potentially won that game at home. Next, you have the Patriots defense, which has been very up and down this year. But I feel like in a game against Miami, where Miami's a good offense, don't get me wrong, they're healthy on the offensive line. They've got Tyreek, Waddle, Jonnu Smith's playing well, Tua is back and he's playing well, all that sort of stuff. New England knows how to play against Miami. So it makes my judgment of Gerard Mayo as a coach, I don't think that it matters as much because they've even expressed, we're going to play matchup ball, we're going to have Gonzalez on Tyreek, et cetera, et cetera. This is how they've played them before, and this is how it's worked for them before on defense. So I think that they're going to have some success on defense. On top of Christian Barmore has another week back. That's huge. Kyle Duggar, another week back. Some of the best defenders on the Patriots defense are back, and there'll be a little bit of rust taken off, okay? The Rams were a team that they're not used to playing. The Miami is a team they're used to playing defensively, so I feel like they can match up. I feel like they know what's coming from Miami, and I feel like, yeah, Miami will score their points, but I think New England will also hang in there defensively, especially considering Gonzalez matches up well with Tyreek. Tyreek is a bit banged up. And I do think Barmore and Duggar really helped this defense. So I don't hate that matchup as much. And then on the other side, Drake May is a baller. I think you can make an argument that if Drake May went to Miami and outplayed Tua, it wouldn't be that shocking. Especially considering that Miami, their edge rush isn't that good. The weakness of the Patriots is probably their offensive line. But the offensive line hasn't played too terrible. You know, Drake May against the Rams, a team that was rushing the quarterback greatly over the last few weeks, Drake May was 30 for 40. I could see a similar script where the Patriots hold the ball, possess the ball, run it, mix in the pass, short passing game. They go down the field, they hold the ball because Miami has actually been allowing the most plays per drive as of late in the NFL. So New England is sneaky getting better on offense. Their run game's getting a bit better. Drake May is ascending with every game he plays. Demario Douglas, Hunter Henry, they're finding their guys. And Kendrick Bourne's getting healthier. I could see him having a good game. He typically does against Miami. So I just think that 7.5 with as mid of a team that Miami is, as average as they are, I don't feel like they're great. I don't feel like they're bad. They're average. Average team laying 7.5. I get that it's at home. But it's Drake May, a kid that I think's way better than people think, and I've said it week after week after week. We've been pretty accurate on the Patriots games as of late. Faded them last week. We're on them against Chicago. We're on them against Tennessee. We're back on them here because it's just too big of a number with how Drake May is playing, with how I feel the Patriots will be able to move the ball down the field against Miami and keep this one competitive. And considering that these two teams know each other well, I don't think it's crazy to suggest this will be a close game. So I like the Patriots plus 7.5 in this one. Next, our final best bet versus the spread for week 12 is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers minus 5.5, specifically 5.5. If you can find a 5.5, I would bet it. At 6, it's a little bit more dicey. I'd prefer to get a 5.5, but you could get a pretty good juiced 6 like towards Tampa Bay. So either way, This one is also relatively simple. It's Baker Mayfield, who in my opinion is still greatly undervalued. He's one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the NFL this year, easily, versus Tommy DeVito, who is a top 65 quarterback in the NFL, maybe. He might not even be that. Like, he is not a good player, okay? On top of that, Tampa Bay is coming off a bye week, Giants coming off a bye week, but I do believe that it benefits Tampa a little bit more to get healthier on defense with Jamel Dean, offense with Mike Evans. I expect Tristan Wirfs to be in there as well. Obviously, that plays a huge factor, and that would probably move the line at least half a point if Tristan Wirfs does not play. I expect Tampa to be largely healthy. They also added Mike Edwards to the safety position, who already knows their defense pretty well during the bye week. So I think that could help them a little bit in their coverage. Where they've been at their weakest is covering the middle of the field. So that might be able to help them. But is DeVito really the guy that's going to expose that? So the way I view this game is Tampa's been getting better and trending up in terms of their run defense. I think that they will be able to slow down Tyrone Tracy enough to put DeVito in enough of those situations where Todd Bowles can be very creative with his blitzes. I also like Todd Bowles a lot more when he plays bad quarterbacks, because usually he forces those quarterbacks to get rid of the ball and make decisions. He's usually very aggressive against those players, which means that typically he's going to blitz them a lot, and typically they're going to have a tough time with it. So I like the Bucs defensively in this game to be able to stop the run well enough, get DeVito into must-pass situations, and then just blitz the living daylights out of him. I think that will work. On the other side, I think that Baker in this offense is the most underrated offense in the league. They can run the ball. You can run the ball against New York. They're one of the 5 worst run defenses in football. Irving's been fantastic. Rashad White's been solid. They're the second best screen team besides Detroit in the NFL. The Giants are also terrible against screens. The Bucs are very creative early in games, which means they'll largely be able to string together a nice play sequencing in the first couple of drives to get them the lead, which will force DeVito into more passes, which is what we want. And then on top of that, Mike Evans returns, so that's going to give them a deep downfield target, a one-on-one target against one of the worst cornerback depth charts in the NFL. So Baker Mayfield versus DeVito, Bowles versus DeVito. Yes, could DeVito have something a little bit different than Daniel Jones? Perhaps. But I mean, at least you don't have to really worry about Daniel Jones as an athlete anymore. Tracy's good. I like Neighbors. I like some of the players on the Giants. I like their front. But the Bucs have sneakily been a good offensive line. I think Mike Evans torches the Giants secondary. I think that the Bucs run the ball effectively. And I think ultimately the Bucs will just score too many points for the Giants to keep up. I think they're going to score around 27. So even if the Giants score 20, you're still covering the spread. Feels like the Bucs will win by 7 to 10 points. I think the Bucs have been underrated. They've played a lot of the best teams in football pretty well, including Kansas City, without their receivers. What's going to happen when Mike Evans returns? I think they're ready to go on a bit of a push towards the playoffs. Because if you look at their schedule, they play Carolina a couple times. They play the Saints. They play the Giants. They play the Raiders. If they can pick up these wins, Atlanta plays a really tough schedule down the stretch. The Bucs are a championship type of team with a lot of guys that have won Super Bowls. This team is not going to give up. And so I think that this starts right after the bye week and they surge in New York and pick up a win and cover the spread. So those are my best bets for week number 12. Let me know yours in the comments section below. If you want to check out what I'm betting in week 12 and beyond, Patreon is the place to be and place to go. Link in the description. I'll put it in the pinned comment as well. It's $10 a month for all of my bets. And we've been pretty darn successful on Patreon as of late, especially Monday Night Football last week. We had an awesome teaser, our best bet that hit. So check it out. This is probably going to be a week where I'm staying away more so from the spreads outright and probably trying different derivatives to try to bet these games. But I do like these picks. I'm hopeful that we can continue the success that we've had over about the last month. So Gronk, spike the like button, subscribe. Thank you guys for watching. Deuces.